What makes the greats great? What makes the successful successful? What makes the brilliant brilliant? Our Tuesday meetups with the celebrities of pharma industry and science are your one-stop shop to all these answers and more. Join us for Pies of Life, an initiative of the Biopatrika Industry Mentorship Program, where we bring your dream mentors to you.
Hi, I'm Mukta Joshi. I'm originally from Mumbai. I was born and brought up in Mumbai. And then in 2000, I came to the US to do my PhD in economics. I have, as my research topic, I studied financial access for hawkers in Mumbai. And I always wanted to do something applied. So ever since I started doing my PhD, my dream was to come to India, do some research work in India, and learn more about our country and problems and what we could do to improve them. So after that, I finished my PhD in 2005, and after between 2006 and 2011, I worked with the World Bank in Washington, D.C. And I was working mainly on financial access for small and medium enterprises, particularly in South Asian countries, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and India. And then 2011, 2012, I took a break. I had two kids, one after the other. And then with 2015, I joined Ideas 42, which is a behavioral science nonprofit based out of New York City, which I will tell you a little more about. So that is my background. Perfect. So now okay. What we are going to do is you are going to look at the shape on the screen and tell me the color of the shape. Okay, that's a game that we are starting with. Is it clear? Maybe you could unmute yourselves, right?
Yeah.
So the task is you will see different shapes. All you have to do is tell me the color of the shapes. Should we start?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Be fast. I'm going to move fast.
Gray.
Okay.
Gray.
Green.
Green.
Yeah.
Green.
Orange.
Orange.
Purple. Red.
Red.
You all
Red.
are impressive. You already are using your system 2 thinking. So let me tell you about this. Has anyone of you played this game before? Yes. Some of you have. So it's a classic test called Stoop test. So what it does typically is that when you are told to look at the shape and say its color, you do that. But when you are shown a word, our brain automatically reads the word instead of telling the color. And that in behavioral science, we call system 1 thinking. So what system 1 thinking does is that it tells you, it helps you in, it's automated thinking that helps you in making quick decisions. So as soon as we wake up and until we go to sleep, in our daily life, there are so many decisions that we have to take, and that system 1 thinking, which is really automatic thinking, allows us to take these millions of decisions that we have to take routinely, right? And then system 2 thinking is basically logical, which requires more thorough processing to complete the task. So if we are given a mathematical problem, for example, we are going to need system 2 thinking versus system 1, right? So what behavioral science teaches us about are these mental shortcuts and in what situations they may be at play. And at Ideas 42, where I work, we use our understanding of the behavioral science to identify when mental shortcuts might be contributing to a problem and design solutions that address them. So let's learn a little bit about Ideas 42. So Ideas 42 is a behavioral science nonprofit. It's a nonprofit consulting organization based out of New York City. What we do is we use insights from behavioral science to design solutions to some of the world's most persistent social problems. So in the past 2 or 3 decades, the behavioral science has really taken off, and behavioral science is actually the integration of psychology, neuroscience, and behavioral economics. We work in as of now, we have worked in over 40 countries, and we work with a range of partners, businesses, governments, foundations, and nonprofits. So we were founded by Sendil Mulainathan, who is a professor now at actually University of Chicago, but he was at Harvard then. Then Antoinette Shore, who is a professor at MIT, and Eldar Shafir, who is a psychology professor at Princeton. And what they found in around 2008 was that their exciting academic research findings, they were looking to apply them in real world. And that's when they actually dreamed up Ideas 42, which started as a small lab, a research lab in Harvard. And then now, after a decade or so, we are a registered nonprofit in the US working on solving social problems, applying behavioral science in over 40 countries. So now let's talk about this. I really want to introduce you to behavioral science, at least to those who are not familiar with. When you look at this slide, you might be intrigued, right? Because it's a little bit ironic. You see that these people that you see on the escalator, you would imagine that they want to exercise, but then instead of taking the stairs, they are actually taking the escalator, right? So what this slide highlights is that people are inconsistent, but it also highlights that there is a context that helps them in making this decision about using an escalator versus the staircase, and that context is having the escalator next to the staircase, right? So when we are thinking about behavioral science, what we think about doing is thinking about why people are taking actions, particular decisions and actions, and really understanding how we can help them understand their behaviors in a way that will help them make decisions or take actions that they themselves want to take for themselves. So that is what behavioral science is all about. And now, so I just told you that the context shapes our decisions and actions. So just as a next step, I want to show you how changing the context actually makes impact. And here I want to share with you the next slide, and I think you won't be able to hear me. So let me stop share and then reshare it so that you can hear this particular video when it plays. Okay, now I'm playing a video and there is some background noise from someone. So if they could mute themselves, that might help. Can you hear?
Yes.
See what happened here, right? When they replaced the regular staircase with a piano-based staircase, the noise or the music that was generated actually helped people to take the staircase versus the escalator. So it was that is what I say a change in context, right? And so this is an example of how in fun way you could also help people make decisions that are many times in their interest. So if most of the people, if you had interviewed them about whether they should have taken the staircase versus escalator, they would have said, oh yes, I should have taken the staircase, but the escalator was just there and I decided to go for it. So this is what I wanted to highlight with that video. Now let me talk about behavioral design in practice. So how do we actually go about changing context and helping people make decisions that they want? So at Ideas 42, we do it through a method that we call the diagnosis method. So what we do is that we start by defining a problem that we are trying to solve. And then this problem is defined in terms of a behavior. After we define the problem, we deep dive into the context. We try to understand, we observe people, we interview these people for whom we are designing a solution, and try to understand what are the behavioral barriers that may be driving this behavior that we have defined in the problem definition phase. Once we know what behavioral bottlenecks are contributing to this problem, we design to directly address those bottlenecks. Then what we design, we try to test it as much as possible through a randomized control trial. And given that you are in the field of biotechnology, you would be familiar with it. So we use RCTs to test the solutions that we are generating, and always we look for scaling the successes that we have had. And this process, although it might look linear, it's actually very iterative. So this is the process that we use to generate ideas and solve problems using behavioral science. Let me stop here before I give you an example of the work that I actually have done so far. Any questions, or you want me to continue? Okay, great. So let me start with the micro. I'm going to talk about financial heuristics, a project that I did in India, in fact, in Bangalore and in the Philippines. So micro entrepreneurs make mistakes in managing their businesses, right? So universally, we find that managing a business is difficult. People who work, particularly in the global South, these people who run extremely small businesses are all like very low educated. They work in low resource environment. They work in resources of, they work in the context of scarcity. And by scarcity, we mean scarcity of time as well as money. So if you have scarce resource, it impacts decision making. So these people are the ones that are working in the context of scarcity, and they also have to make complex financial and business decisions. And they have to do all this with lack of skills or support to manage business and finances. So what is the solution so far? The solution is, okay, to address this problem by developing skills or support by offering business training through entrepreneurs. And then traditional business trainings are offered to entrepreneurs, where they are brought in a classroom-based setting to educate them about financial and business management topics like accounting, business planning. And although millions of dollars have been spent on these programs annually, such programs have had very limited impact on changing behaviors, right? So why that is the case? Because the traditional program actually assumes that micro entrepreneurs make mistake in business management because they do not have the knowledge, right, of how to manage a business. So what is the solution? They offer these programs and just provide a lot of information and knowledge, and then they expect that whatever knowledge is shared, these people apply it once they come out of the classroom by themselves, right? But behaviorally, what we found is that our behavioral diagnosis, in fact, highlighted that although micro entrepreneurs may have the intention to apply what is taught in training, contextual features like complexity of material, for example, makes it really hard to translate their intentions into actions. People have limited cognitive processing ability, meaning synthesizing classroom knowledge into real world behavior may be really difficult to do, or it could be done incorrectly. And then conditions of scarcity can further exacerbate these conditions. So when people feel strapped for time or money, their attention gets narrowed and they systematically neglect certain decisions and consequences. So these insights led one of our co-founders, Antoinette Shore, and her team of researchers to look for alternative ways to teach business management to entrepreneurs, and that led to the birth of financial heuristics, or rules of thumb for financial management. So based on their prolonged research and observations of micro entrepreneurs in the Dominican Republic, they found that knowledge alone is not often complex and difficult to translate into actions. On the other hand, distilling information into simple applicable rules of thumb actually can lower the barriers to adoption and improve behaviors, even in the context of complete lack of understanding of accounting or business planning. And that's how financial heuristics were developed. So instead of teaching micro entrepreneurs double ledger accounting, you teach them use two separate locations for your business and household cash. Pay yourself a fixed weekly salary. If you borrow from the business location for household, pay it back. Only give to credit to customers if prior credit is paid off. So all these are really simple rules of thumb backed in theory, but all what the entrepreneur gets is these simple rules that are very, very easy to remember and apply. So once we developed this training, we offered this training in a classroom-based setting in the Dominican Republic, and we found that those who received this financial heuristics-based training versus accounting-based training actually perform better, not only in terms of improving business practices, but also in terms of generating more sales. So we know that our curriculum worked, but then the problem we faced when we started thinking about scale is that even classroom-based training, although simple, is hard to scale, because think about micro entrepreneurs who have to leave their businesses, families, and come and attend multiple long sessions to get this training. From the perspective of financial institution, which typically offers such trainings, they have to do a lot of coordination, logistics, right? So we thought about using a different delivery channel, and for this iteration we decided to go for mobile phones, because these people also work in low resource context and they are not as educated. Sending something on the phone as text messages wouldn't have worked. So we decided to go with IVR, interactive voice response technology, and started sending messages to the entrepreneurs over their mobile phones. And our diagnosis phase confirmed that the problems that these micro entrepreneurs were facing were, and as I said, these are the micro entrepreneurs in India and the Philippines. They were very similar to what we had observed in the Dominican Republic. So our actually main goal for this training was to make sure that our content is engaging. So we worked with a marketing firm in India and the Philippines, and made these audio messages very, very engaging. So we had a virtual micro entrepreneur who, based on her 15 years of business, was sharing tips and tricks about business management with micro entrepreneurs over the phone at the time that they wanted to get these messages. And each message was about 3 to 4 minutes long. And we sent this training on a weekly basis for about 6 months. And what we found that we also send the content in a soap opera style. So people were very interested to hear it versus just getting it in terms of instructional messages that could sound very dry and almost boring. So what we found was that people really engaged well with our content. Over approximately 75% people in the Philippines and India actually picked up the call. There was high listenership, and we also found that this engagement with content translated into change in business practices. And what we found is that in the Philippines, our microfinance institution with whom we work to offer this training to its clients actually offered this training to more clients, and now we are really scaling this training in Africa, currently in Ethiopia, for example. So this is the work that I did as soon as I joined Ideas 42. Now I work mostly in Africa. Currently, I work on projects where there are a lot of cash transfer programs that basically help people come out of poverty. So in the past 2 decades or so, cash transfer programs have been one of the most powerful toolkit to address poverty. And what it entails is actually giving direct cash to vulnerable people. And what we do at Ideas 42 is that we typically partner with the World Bank and governments in sub-Saharan Africa, so who are offering these cash transfer programs to their beneficiaries. And what we do is that we add behavioral interventions, or what we also call nudges, to these programs, so that the cash doesn't only get spent on consumption, but it also helps people to improve their livelihoods. So we help people make plan making exercise to, for example, invest their cash in productive inclusion activities like a business or learning a new skill, for example. So at Narendka's request, I'm adding a few pictures. First picture is from Philippines, where I'm talking to a beneficiary while doing the diagnosis work. And the other picture is from Ethiopia, where I'm again talking to beneficiaries to understand their context, asking them questions, and then actually they are doing an activity we have developed as a solution to one of the problems. And one of the best part of my job is that I get to travel a lot, and sometimes I also get to bring my family and kids with me. So I think in 2019, I took my children to Ethiopia with me, and I had taken my nanny also. So she was looking after them and I was working, but I wanted to give them that exposure. And these are my children. So they definitely got, my daughter made her hair afro. They are wearing its traditional Ethiopian clothes here. Then they got to play with Ethiopian kids, got to interact with a lot of people. We took vacation and ate a lot of good food. So on that note, I will end here and then take your questions or talk to you more about. But yeah, I thought because this is a emerging field, and I am pretty confident not many people are unfortunately using it. I wanted to introduce you to the field of behavioral science. And I really think that when you work, most of us work for people, right? Whatever we are developing, it could be a program, it could be a product, or it could be a service. We develop it for the people, and people's behavior is quirky. It is inconsistent, and not predictable, but it actually, there are lessons that have now emerged from behavioral science that we could apply. And when we use these insights, what we are able to do is design more effectively than otherwise. So there are many instances where programs are just developed, and what is assumed is that because once the program is out there, people will just take it up. But that is not the case. There are so many programs, even in the US, that go underutilized because there are, for example, a lot of hassle factors. So for example, here, low-income population can get financial aid to go to college, but many people actually do not avail that benefit because it's such a hassle to fill out the forms. So in one intervention, we help pre-populate the fields. And when we did that, the results were much stronger. Many people completed the application because it helped them reduce those hassle factors. So just to give you more examples from what I mean. So that's what I wanted to say. And if I would love to now open it for discussion and specific questions, or if you would like to know anything more, feel free to ask.
Yeah,
Narendra, you are.
no, just raise your
Yeah.
hand. I think I'll ask Reshma to ask the first question this time.
Thank you. Thank you for the talk. It was very interesting to hear about how the behavioral science is being applied to the real world and how they are helped financially. So my question would be like, how did this idea emerge that this behavioral science, behavior of the people, can be understood to overcome their problems, their daily life problems? How this idea has emerged and how this idea 42 came in?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. So, I don't know how much familiar you are with the field of economics, right? So, in economics, I will tell you that we are all considered as econs. So, humans are considered as econs. By econs, we mean that we are considered as rational decision makers. So, when we are posed with a decision, we economics assumes that we weigh all costs and benefits, and if benefits are higher than costs, we make make the decision in favor. If not, we don't, right? But that is not how we live our life. So traditional, really theoretical economics assumes this. But what behavioral economics does is that people have preferences. People might behave inconsistently. People, even when benefits are more than cost, people may not do something. And why do they not do something when that they should have done it based on the principles of economics? It's because of their behavior. So I gave you an example, right, where you saw that these kids who are from low income households, they are offered benefits such as financial aid. If they were rational econs, they would do costs and benefits analysis. Benefits of going to college are going to definitely outweigh costs. They will go for it. That is not what we observe. What we observe was that they just give up. Why do they give up? Because of the hassle factors. The forms are really, really long. So their current costs are so high that they don't think about their future. And that is called present bias. So what we do is that we have to think about how people like follow a process. What are the steps in the process that people have to take to do something that we want them to do, right? And then for each step of this process, we think about what, if there are, from a behavioral perspective, what could be the bottlenecks, and then we design so that it helps them navigate through the process more successfully than just putting it out there and leaving it on their own, right? So that's how the field of behavioral economics emerged. And I think about 2018, I imagine, yeah, I think Professor Richard Thaler, who is called the father of behavioral economics, got the Nobel Prize, and he has written one of the most famous books called Nudge. So that is about small behavioral interventions. And if you all get a chance, I would really encourage you to read it, because it gives very, very simple examples of how changing context can have big impacts that at low cost. So that is one thing. And then ideas 42, that question, good that you asked. Many people ask this question. So this is a very nerdy company. So as I said, we started as a research lab at Harvard. And so the reason we are, how many of you have read or are familiar with Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy book? You are okay. So there a supercomputer is asked this question: what is the meaning of life? And that computer thinks, and after a lot of time comes up with the answer 42, right? And then when that computer is asked, why did you say the answer is 42, it says, in order to get the right answer, you have to ask the right questions. So that is what 42 represents. It's very, very nerdy, but we believe that in order to get the right solution, you have to really, really ask the right question. And that's why in our methodology, defining the problem is one of the most critical steps. We don't want to, so sometimes when we work with partners, they come up with a problem. But then when we work closely, we realize that is not the problem. The problem is something else, right? So that's what we want to make sure, that we work on a problem that is the problem versus that what is not.
Yeah. Let's go with
Thank you.
Akshay, because I don't know why the guys never call into these meetings, right? I don't know. Akshay, go ahead. Kudos to you.
Um, so I was wondering, what is it like working for an NGO versus a corporate? Is it a much more interesting environment? Are you allowed to practice things without that end goal being a very important factor?
I've never worked for a corporate job, right?
Corporate job, okay.
So I actually, when I was really like in 2013 or something, I was in Boston, and it's really hard to get like, New York or DC, in the US at least, you get a lot of jobs in like international organizations or not profit, not much in Boston. So I actually worked for a corporate job for 9 months or something, and I was not ready for it. But my friend worked there. My husband said, how can you say that you like for non-profit work when you don't know the counterpart, and that counterpart is actually for profit work? So I said, okay, let me be open and do that job. And I really felt that I am not meant to do such jobs. It was a market research company, and because my background is in economics, i I it's not something. Economics is applied to many fields, right? So it's quite like as an economist, your skills are quite transferable. But I really realized that what drives me is actually making that impact. So and I'm sure people in the private sector make that impact, but my educational background is also in the field of international development. So like what I have learned, I really, that I just, when I think about myself, I think that if I spend so much time in learning something, I really don't think I'm an expert in other things. So I just focus on what I know the best and try to apply what I know to the problems that might find my skill set valuable. So that's why I have always worked in this field. And as for working at Ideas 42, it's really not a typical NGO. And could be a use, like, again, I am a behavioral scientist now, so I'm thinking about behavioral biases. So I might be stereotyping right now when I say that usually standards are a little lower when you consider nonprofits, but that is really not the case where I work. So where I work, I really get an opportunity to work with very sharp and smart minds. As you could see on our board, you will see people who are Nobel laureates, right? So Daniel Kahneman, who got the Nobel Prize in economics for example, for his work in psychology and loss aversion. So, or Richard Thaler. So I really get to work with really smart people, a lot of academicians. So, and then so I also get to work on problems that are important in my perspective. And one of the best parts about working at Ideas 42 versus the World Bank is that when I worked with the World Bank, we did a lot of research. Like I did a lot of research, came up with a lot of reports, and I don't know what happened to those reports. I can't guarantee you that those reports were read by the governments and policy changed because of those, right? But when I developed something at Ideas 42, because we care so much for testing. So in the example of financial heuristics, we put together this curriculum and we tested it through randomized control trials. So I can see, okay, what we designed, does it really make an impact in the real world? And if it does, I also have the opportunity to actually scale it to more people. So I think all these factors really make me stay in the field that I have chosen.
Okay. Raji, raise your hand.
Yes. Hello, ma'am. This is Rajeshri Kadam. I'm currently doing my PhD from Tata Memorial Center. So actually, I have two things to ask. In your talk, you are talking about micro entrepreneur, where you are actually helping small business people to expand their business further and helping them out on that. So how these micro entrepreneurs differ from a terminology called normal entrepreneurs, where people with new ideas, which may have some good impact, like in terms of like socio-economical benefits or maybe benefits in agriculture. So do you help such entrepreneurs also with some novel ideas? Can such people approach this ideas 42, or you help only people with some basic or established kind of business setup? So this is my first question. And second question is, does this idea of cash transfer program really work in countries like India, where people are not so mm, like I mean they are not so good with education, and there are so many problems, socio-economical problems, and especially I'm talking in terms of tribal areas in India, where there is scarcity of such basic resources. Uh, so, what is your opinion about this idea?
Okay, so let me answer your first question. So Ideas 42 basically works through funding by various foundations, or bilateral government funding or multinational. So we get, so the thing is, when we work on something, typically it is through a project that we have received funding for. So when we developed training curriculum from for financial heuristics project that I shared with you about, that is where we actually had developed that project when we had received funding for that from the World Bank and from the US government. So we do not work with individual entrepreneurs. We basically work with end users as part of the project that we specifically work on. So that said, for the population that you just mentioned, we wouldn't be able to help, but I can definitely share some resources. So if you are talking about somebody who is very interested in a business idea and trying to build his or her own business, and they are pretty educated and they have access to the internet, there are a lot of relatively uh, in fact some of them very like free resources that I can share with you. So one is from the World Bank, another one is from ILO. So that's what I can share on that. With regards to cash transfers have shown actually to work better than any in-kind assistance offered to people anywhere. So typically, in the field of international development, the idea was that when you give people things in kind, you are making sure that they don't waste the money you give, right? So you are giving people something in kind as aid. But as more and more research started happening, what they found was that many times what you offer in kind may not be what people really need, right? And there is also a strong assumption in that approach that people are going to be bad decision makers when you give them cash. And when more field studies on this topic emerged, what they found was that that is not the case. When you give people cash, for example, yes, you might think that, oh, people might start drinking more, for example, because now they got cash. But the increase in alcohol consumption was not significantly different from people who were doing it before receiving the cash. So it did not, that is like, of course there will be such people, but they are not as many, or they don't increase in proportion just because you give them the cash. So this cash transfer actually started in Latin America, particularly in Mexico. And the program was so successful that now in many parts of the world, particularly in Africa, there is a field like this concept of cash transfers has taken place, and it really has proven impact. And sometimes, so there are two types of cash transfers: conditional cash transfer and unconditional cash transfer. So unconditional is you just give people cash and they will just use it for example, consumption, right? The conditional cash transfer program is basically, if you send people, your kids to school, then only you get the cash, right? So it is tied to an other outcome that the government or the funder is very interested in. And what behavioral science has shown, so firstly, unconditional cash transfers are very easy to implement because you don't need to check, right? There is no administrative burden because you are just giving people, once you decide who is your eligible people, you just hand out the cash. But if you go for conditional cash transfer, there is lot of administrative things that you have to do, right? So you have to check, for example, you has this person, how many days did he or she send her kids to school, for example, etc. All these things have to be done. So here also in this field, so conditional cash transfers have proven to be very expensive. So what behavioral scientists did was that they took out the conditional part in one study. I think it was in Malawi or Zambia, again in sub-Saharan Africa. What they did was that they distributed the cash in a school setting, but they did not put condition that you have to send your kids to school. So it was an unconditional cash transfer program, but the venue was school setting. So what it basically did was that it showed the significance of school to those who were coming to get the cash. And those people who came to school and took their cash actually started sending their kids more to school. So you have now really taken away extra burden, but nudged people by just changing the context. So instead of asking them to come to a program office, right, district office to collect cash, you ask them to come to school. So basically you said schools are important, and then you could potentially also put some visual clues like posters about kids going to school, etc. So this is how also behavioral science could be powerful in helping people make choices that are going to help them in their future. As for India, I think India's cash transfer programs are they are not as strongly implemented as uh, in actually in Latin America or sub-Saharan Africa. But having said that, actually India has the biggest cash transfer program in the world, which was related to that LPG gas subsidy. So that is a program which is actually people get subsidy for using that LPG cylinder or something like that. I just feel that uh, the questions that you asked, Rajashri, these are very important questions. Anybody who's thinking about cash transfers are going to ask these questions. But even in the context of Indian people, finally we are all human. I am pretty certain, based on what we have found, that cash transfers would work better than in-kind transfer.
Yes, so I'd like to ask ma'am. So I'm Rai Kamal. I'm currently doing my postdoctoral research in neuroscience. So maybe I missed the first part, but what made you uh, get interested in behavioral science? As in, did you ever have a biology background, or as in you're the first person I'm seeing who had an economic background, but then connected that to behavioral science. So
Yeah, behavioral science doesn't require knowledge of biology, right? Behavioral science
right,
is the field that talks about, like, that integrates the field of psychology, neuroscience, and
yes,
then economics. So I'm like, those who might be working in it from neuroscience perspective
yes,
may have biological like background, but
right.
if you are a psychologist or economist, you need not have it, right?
Hmm,
So
hmm.
I would say that l- I must say that I was not particularly interested in behavioral science before I joined Ideas
Hmm.
42. So I was looking for a job. I wanted to make sure that I work in the nonprofit sector. I continue to make impact. And then I found this position which required like background in financial access and work experience in developing countries, which I
Yes.
had because of my academic background, and then I worked with the World Bank, right? And then when I started working at Ideas 42, we wanted to scale financial heuristics, and they had done one trial with audio phones in India that had failed. So they were looking for somebody to just scale it because they thought that our trial is going to work, but actually it failed. So that brought me into behavioral science, because then, because the trial failed, we started redeveloping the content, which I would have not had opportunity had we not failed. Because if you don't fail, you would just use what you have. So
Yes.
that's how I got interested in like behavioral science. But before that, when I was around 2006, I used to actually work with Professor Carla Hoff, who is actually an economist, development economist, who works in the World Bank and also teaches in Columbia and Princeton. And I worked with her, and we worked actually in Uttar Pradesh. So we would go there in villages and learn about decision making and in the context of caste system. So that was my introduction to behavioral science. So although I had introduction to it, I never applied it. But then luckily I got interest, like I got this job, and then I think that's how I actually learned about it.
So when you are designing a strategy, it is mainly based on a community or a certain section of people, right? So when you go for the field work, how significant are the interperson differences amongst a community? Or do you take into account the personal differences from one person to the other?
Yeah, that's a good question. Usually we don't design for one person, right? But
Right,
we
right.
design for the context we are in. So if I'm
Yes.
talking about, let's say, a Woreda in Ethiopia, many times very similar people live there,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? So what we do is that, uh, let's say we are working with cash transfer program recipients. So to some extent they are very similar to each other, right? They live in a
Yes.
particular area, they have a low education background, they work in really really resource constrained environment, they are from the same community, for example. And what we do is that when we go in the field, we talk to them, I ask a lot of qualitative questions. We really try to understand their context, observe how they behave, how they make decisions, take actions, and and design the solutions which typically work for the particular community that we have designed it in. And then of course we used randomized controlled trial to make sure
Yes.
they are really helpful, right? So that is one way to go about it. So now, once what I have applied in, like what I have developed in Ethiopia, would it be actually relevant for South Africa? That is a question that is I cannot answer that. Usually highly likely the case, but we still have to go in that context, talk to people there, confirm that the problems they face are similar if I want to use the solution I have developed. And if I see that it is actually the problems are similar, still whatever my solution is, I will have to some extent modify it to make sure it is applicable to their context, because context
Right.
differs.
Right. Yes.
Yes, who is talking? Aparajita?
Aparajita, you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. Hi,
Yeah.
Mukta. Prajita here. I'm a experienced biotech professional. So, as you already said that, conditional versus unconditional money flow. So, I think it has more, behavioral, uh, edge over the economics part. What you think about it? Like, easy cash flow can be more beneficial, or as most of the economists say, that if say you are distributing something which is free of cost, it is not always like, prefer people go and prefer that. So I think that that is the same thought which you also echo here in your case. So what it will lead, actually, it will lead to an open economy or a closed economy, basically. So where we are leading through it in case of economics, basically.
I don't think I'm qualified to answer what you are saying, because I think what you're asking is at a very macro level. But what I could say is that there was a recent study that was done in Canada with homeless people with homeless people, and what it involved was giving people cash directly, and they gave 7,500 to homeless people, and then they tracked the outcomes and their behaviors over a year. And what they found was that many people who got this cash actually moved out of the streets and rented a place, right? They started eating better. They started feeding their kids better. And the net benefit actually was positive, because for each homeless person, government spends on shelters, for example. So now, and then and other facilities, and the cost per person was $8,000 versus you just gave $7,500 to these people, right? So the outcome was positive. So when you are thinking about generally, like I'm not even sure I understood your question, but I'm just trying to apply this micro context to macro context. And what I will say is that there is this, you always think about capitalism versus mixed economy or socialism, right? So there is this concept of universal basic income that is emerging. So you make sure everybody in the society is assured of the basic minimum. And what it shows is that that those people who had nothing, if you give something to them, actually what happens is that you show them, if you have money, how they can improve their life. So instead of like giving cash to people doesn't make them lazy, but it shows them how they can improve their lives, and they actually start working more than they have, right? So if that is what, and then because you are giving them cash, you are also taking economies money from other services that are catered for these people. So as that's why I gave you an example from the Canada study. So I think giving people cash to help them like do better in life and survive actually has more positive impact than otherwise.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Maybe we'll take two more questions.
I'd like to ask one question. It is again with this direct cash transfers. So don't you think instead of giving them the cash directly, if this money is given to them as a loan, it will make them more responsible and it will be a long-term solution rather than a direct cash transfer?
So if you give loan, what are you expected to do with it, right? Just
okay, so if as you mentioned about the conditional cash transfer, if your child is going to the school, that the parents will receive the money, the direct cash transfer. So after a few years, that money, the parents or the child will have to repay the money to the NGO. So I think it will make them more responsible, or they continue basically going to the school.
So when you make a loan, first of all, you need to make sure people have repayment capacity. Why would somebody give them a loan if you are not even sure people are able to repay, right? Here you are talking about people who cannot even eat enough, right? So if you give loan to them, you are not sure about their repayment capacity. These are not the people, these are not micro entrepreneurs. These are the people who are trying to make a living. So these are really, really poor people. So some of them might have a business, and a loan could be helpful, but they are not yet at that level. So that's why subsistence cash transfer is a program that is offered to many of such peoples. But then there is again there are some programs that actually help people start a business, for example, and that's one of the programs I'm working with in Ethiopia. But there is no loan given, because it's more for such people. Giving a loan is more like a burden, because you are telling them to return it when they don't even know whether how to go about it, right? But in one of the cash transfer programs in Ethiopia, they give people cash for work. So they work, they get cash, and as part of this program, which is for 3 years, they also get $500 to start their business. So that is a grant, and then the program offers a lot of trainings and skill development activities, so that these people are able to start their own livelihood before they graduate from the program. But uh, in the context of people we are talking about, loan wouldn't, at least based on what I know, loan wouldn't be a good idea, because it comes with a lot of conditions that they still have to meet.
One more question.
Ma'am, I have one question. So, how do you identify the socio-economic problems before you offer solutions to them, taking into consideration the behavioral aspect? So, for example, you mentioned like there were micro entrepreneurs for which you offered solutions, but these entrepreneurs might not be aware that they're facing this financial losses, or their business is not working properly. So how do you identify these problems in different countries and then design your solutions?
That's a very, very good question, Trupti. So I think what we is she here? Oh, my screen changed, so I couldn't see you. Okay, so the thing is that the way we work is we work. So you basically have asked how do we scope our projects, right? So that happens in multiple ways. One way is basically to we respond to different RFPs by different organizations, right? So they have identified problems. We think that the problem is behavioral and it can solve the issue. We apply for them. Then in the case of micro entrepreneurs, we already had our academician who was doing research on the topic, and that's where they realized about the behavioral challenges that these micro entrepreneurs faced, right? So once that became clear, then we realized that, okay, the problems that so far have been focused on are not behavioral in nature, but we think that this could be a problem that is behavioral in nature and we could address. Then we come up with concept notes and proposals, connect, and then talk to different funders, and if they have interest, they fund us. So that's how we go about it. Sometimes, now that we are in the field for over a decade, uh, partners or funders just come and say that we think this is a problem, and we think there could be some behavioral bottlenecks going on. So we again connect with them, uh, go through a lot of discussions to see if there is indeed something that we can work on, and then work on those issues.
So, ma'am, do you only consider the lower income groups for such kind of work, or general population?
Yeah, that's again a good question. We only work, we are a social, like we are a non-profit, so we really want to work for the people who are economically disadvantaged, or like in some way or the other disadvantaged, so low resource, or yeah. So we do work with only those people for now.
Anyone one last question? Who's not
Ma'am, one last question.
someone who's not asked before. Indu, do you have a question? Okay, okay. Anyone else other than other? Okay, Raji, go ahead.
Ma'am, one basic question actually. Can this idea of cash transfer thing be implemented to have beggars free nation kind of idea?
We will have to design an experiment, test it, and see what it says. I can't tell you that it will work, but I think it's worth trying.
Yeah. Good, good. So, if you guys are interested in talking to Mukta further, I'll give you her contact details, and you can talk to her separately if is there more interest. But Mukta, before we finish, a few rapid answer questions. Okay, ready? Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Hey, one more thing before you guys go. Another thing that Mukta does, I haven't read many of them, but she writes travelogues of her travel in Marathi. She writes a lot of travel descriptions when she goes. Right, right, Mukta?
No.
You've written some. You've shown me one at least.
Yeah. Which one? I don't remember. I write, but not travelogue. You
Yeah.
may have definitely
You
read something, but
read travelogue. You read travelogues and you
correct.
read travelogues.
But
Yeah,
I wrote correct.
write a little
You
bit.
mixed up. Okay.
Okay.
No, if they ask for it, I wouldn't have it. So I should be honest.
I mixed up the two things. You read travelogues and you also write a little bit. Yeah. So I combined the two. Anyway, so which country do you like? Have you liked the best so far that you've worked in?
Philippines.
Philippines. What is the strangest experience you've had?
So when we were in India, once we were collecting data in a rural village in Ethiopia, and once like what is it called, Hawaldar, right? Like he came running after us, and I had luckily nobody in my research team. Like we all were okay, but he started bringing a lathi, and he was really mad that we were doing this work. Luckily, I had my World Bank ID, so he let us go.
Uh, what's sort of been the best, so related to this, what's been your best moments in your career?
Best moment in my career is as a mother. I just feel that sometimes I don't know. Many of you are young and probably don't even have kids, but I just feel that sometimes I wonder. For a mother, it is always hard to make like you. It always is hard to juggle work and kids, right? And then this question of whether I would be a better mother if I leave my job comes in, and I just feel that I actually am a better mother because of my job, because I get to share with my kids what I learn, and then I give them different types of experiences which I myself wouldn't get if I was not working in this field. So that is the highlight of my career.
Hmm. What a person in India in general that you admire, somebody who's done good works, anyone that you admire from India?
I think Ila Bhatt, who started microfinance in India with Seva in Gujarat. So I think amazing work that actually inspired me also.
And internationally?
Internationally, I really appreciate Nelson Mandela.
Okay. Then any mentor advice that you've got that is you feel like that sticks with you? Any?
More than advice, I just think one of the lessons I probably just by chance it happened to me, but I would just say it because I think it's important. I think you should always follow what your mind or heart tells you to do as your career versus what others are telling is the best for you.
Excellent. No, it's such a good way to sort of end this presentation. But my last question is from a as you interview people for roles in your company, or you've interviewed in other places in your companies, etc. What are the qualities that a person should have when you want to hire somebody? What are you looking for? Obviously, the technical knowledge is there, but in addition to that, what are you looking for in a person?
I really feel that passion is important, and that comes when you're talking to people. And I think another thing is problem solving attitude, and like really being positive and taking up challenges, because I really feel in my field, I feel it's really very hard to do the work, but it's like I really feel that what keeps us going is that we believe that this is really good and we can make an impact. So so that's what I would say. Passion, as I said, problem solving attitude, and then just, enjoying what they get to do, because when you enjoy, you are able to put more without complaining, and that shows in your work also.
Great. Okay, so thank you so much, Mukta, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. It's an hour and 15. We've recorded this and we'll send it to you and everyone else.
A network should last a lifetime. Let us help you create lasting professional relationships with our world-class mentors through the Biopatrika Industry Mentorship Program. A strategic guidance program unlike no other, full of expert interviews, industry internship opportunities, CV writing, inflection point analysis, life maps, and of course, the gateway to your dream career. For a limited time only, all our services are freely available for you, as we truly want you to succeed.